Good morning, everybody. Happy day 2 of our March Women's group. I'm so excited. I think yesterday was really good. I think a lot of good points were brought up, and I think there was a lot of good conversation started. And I really love to see how much you are, encouraging and loving and communicating with each other. I think that one of the best things about this group is going to be that, you can very well meet some of your absolute best friends that, down the road, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. We like met in a Facebook group, but it can happen. One of my very, very best friends in the whole world, I met on Facebook, and I even only met her in person for the first time last year. So this is, also really cool because you just never know why you were led here, and there might be somebody here that you were 100% supposed to end up crossing paths with and interacting with, and someone who might end up being, a very dear friend of yours. So I think that's really cool, and I was so happy to see so many of y'all, encouraging each other. I want you to also make sure that you do receive a good word yourself, and that you don't just get so focused on giving everyone else, a piece of your value and heart and advice that you've forgotten to do your own self-reflection on the topic that day. So make sure you still do that. Write it down. Think about it. Pray about it. Because everyone in here can always get better, including myself. One thing I wanted to say, a thing like, good morning. Good morning. Do I say, is it Tana? Good morning, Tana. Hey, Katie. I'm not going to do it. You know what I want to do, Katy Perry. You know what I want to do, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to sing it. Okay. So forgive me. It's not like my nose is running, but it's super itchy because this Midwest weather is driving my allergies insane this morning. So there's a lot of sniffling and maybe a few sneezes right in between. We'll see. Luckily, I'm just hoping that if I sneeze, I don't pee myself while we're on this live feed, because it can happen and you know it. Okay, mamas, this is true. But okay. One thing I want to make, I think it's heavy on my heart because it's something that I myself struggled with as a mother and as a female who's always felt like I had something else and I didn't know what it was. Somebody had mentioned yesterday they felt like they had lost themselves. And the thing is, feeling like that doesn't make you a bad mom. Like, there's so many of us who have felt like that, and I think that the point behind saying that was probably that you're not taking care of yourself, that you come dead last. And I have to say this because it's come up more than once, but being a good mother is taking care of yourself. I mean, think about it. When your kid grows up and has a kid of their own, do you want them to still take care of themselves, or do you want them to feel run down, overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious, and therefore unhappy and miserable? Or would your advice to your child when they get older, would it be, you got to take care of yourself too? I hope it would, because you have to take care of yourself. There is a reason. If you're so busy fiddling with your kid's oxygen mask while the plane's going down that you pass out, then what happens? They're all alone. Now they've got to deal with going down in a plane crash all by themselves because mom's passed out over here because she didn't follow the rules. You know what I'm saying? And the argument for that could be, well, she loved her kid more than herself. Well, if you take the time, guys, to put your oxygen mask on, which for some of us is a walk, take a walk, get some fresh air, some alone time. Maybe if you love to read. If you love to write, take some quiet time to write. There are things that you love that make you who you are outside of being a mom. There are, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the truth. There are things that make you who you are outside of being a mom. And you need to nourish the things that make you you and bring you joy and make you happy. And it's okay to say that there are things that bring you joy outside of motherhood. I love sports. I obviously love public speaking. I love coaching. I love running these kinds of groups. And I love, having relationships with people, having conversations, pouring value into others. I love doing all of those things outside of the fact that I'm a mother. I also obviously love being a mother. You can do both. You can have both. And if what you're feeling is that you've lost yourself, it's probably because you have. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you just need to accept this is what you're rolling. Because listen, when I had my first daughter, Presley, I remember looking at my mom and saying, Mom, I think I now know what my purpose in life is. And I said, I think it's being a mother. I think this is what I was made to do, like what I'm made for. Because I had been feeling all my life like there was just something more and I didn't know what it was. And so when I had her, I was like, obviously she was my first daughter. So I was just like, oh my, and I mean, you're like this with all your kids, not just your first, but when you've never had a baby before, you don't know what that's going to feel like. And then you have that baby and it's just like, you're drunk on love with this child, with this baby. And so I was like, this has to be it, because I'm like really, I'm pretty good at this. Like, I know what she needs. I'm nursing. I'm doing well with that. Like, I just was like, I'm a good mom. I'm good at this. This is my purpose. So I told my mom, I said, hold on, Tiffany. Sorry, I was reading your comment. I'll finish my thought and then I'll read it. But I told my mom, I said, this must be my purpose. This must be my purpose. And then at 6 months, I had to go back to work. I had to rip myself away from her, and I had to go back to work because, I mean, I had no choice. We had to. And so, at that time, I began to feel that's when the negative kind of, failure type feelings and feeling like, what is going on with, like, this isn't really what I wanted out of life, working 14 hours a day, not seeing her as much as I wanted to, seeing her at night before bed basically was when I would see my daughter. And then I got pregnant with my second daughter, and I remember just being like, what is, like, I was really like, I was nervous because I was already working so much, and now I was gonna have another child, and I was like, I'm gonna have to keep working so much, or maybe even more. And so from there, it just kind of spiraled into, and there's much stuff that happened between, but it kind of spiraled into, I was at this place where I just lost myself. I totally lost myself. And a huge part of who I am, if you follow my page, is having a sense of humor and being, energetic and bubbly. Not all the time. But it happened. And I wasn't any of those things anymore. I didn't play any kind of sports. I wasn't active anymore. I didn't read anymore. I didn't write anymore. I didn't do any of the things that always had made me who I am. And I stopped, and everything just became about diapers and cleaning and wiping noses and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I love being a mother, but there's also nothing wrong with feeling like there's something else you're meant to do. And if I hadn't followed the calling that I had on my life to do more than to be at home, and that's not a put down. I think some moms feel like that's a put down when you say that. I think it's just because there's no really good wording for it. There's no really good way to say, I just didn't feel like I was meant to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm not saying that because a stay-at-home mom is important. I'm saying that that's just not what my life had a calling on it for. If your life has a calling on, that's what makes you, brings you joy, that's what your purpose is. You know it because your spirit gives you, you just know. My spirit that wasn't, where he was leading me. And I felt that every day. And so there's a difference. And, sometimes your purpose is to be at home, but you're just not taking care of yourself. And so therefore you can't find that joy that you should be feeling if that's your calling. So if I hadn't followed my calling, though, you wouldn't be here in this group. If I had thought to myself, well, I have children, so I'm not supposed to do anything, but just focus on them all the time, and you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here in this group, because I would have never pursued, the calling that I had all my life, which was to pour into others and to coach others and to speak, public speaking, and to travel, which does mean some weekends away from home sometimes. And that's okay. Everyone has a different purpose in life. Everyone has a different path, and everyone has a different thing that stirs their spirit. Okay. And you can be a working mom, you can have a business, or you can be a stay-at-home mom, which is just as much work, if not more. I've been both. You can be a work-from-home mom, and all of that is different, but the one similarity is that you're a mom. You're a mom. You're a mother, no matter which of those you are. And your mothering duties are no less just because you have a business, or you work outside the home, or you work in the home, or you actually, take care of yourself. Something that's come up more than once lately is the excuse I've gotten from women who won't take care of themselves, and they say this to me, and it's like, why would you say that? They'll say, well, my kids come first. And first of all, I'm like, what are you trying to say? Here's the thing. Taking care of yourself is putting your kids first. You're setting an example for them. Mommy loving herself is important. Mommy having energy and being happy and having joy is important. And if your joy is if you're a mom who's figured out who God says you are, you can pour that into your kids. And that's such an amazing thing for you to be able to do. And you want them to see you happy, doing things that you love, while also loving them with everything you have, every ounce of your being, right? So it's okay. It's okay if you feel like there's something else you were meant to do. And it's okay if you feel what you're meant to do is just the focus on all of the mom duties. And I just want to make something clear too. There are duties of a stay-at-home mom that a working mom still does too. And there are, you know what I mean? And the difference is how you feel about it. It's your heart, it's your soul, it's how you feel about it. So if it makes you happy, if it brings you joy, and if you know that that's, what God wants you doing and where He wants you, that's awesome. It's not a competition. We're all good mothers. We're all wonderful people. But you do have a spirit, and you do have qualities about you that are yours and yours alone, outside of all of the people you're taking care of and that you love the most. There are things about you that are just you. There are things that you love that are yours and yours alone. And you don't have to forget them, and you don't have to leave them behind to be a mother. And that's just kind of what the point that I wanted to make, is that you can absolutely nurture yourself too. And you're no good to your children if you're unhappy, miserable, tired, and I'll say this too, man. When I was not feeling good about myself and who I was and feeling lost, I was not as good a mom. I was snippy and snappy and no energy, and you know what I mean? I took care of them and took care of things, but I wasn't happy. And I would much rather have a mom who's happy and loves life than someone who's just robotically going through the motions because that's what they're supposed to do. You know what I mean? So it's okay. It's okay to find things about you and who you are that make you who you are, and to nurture those aspects of yourself. It's very important. It's very important. Okay? We're talking about passion today. Let's see. I'm going to read one of your, Let's see here. Carmen, you feel like there's a big ball of potential in you, and that's okay. Honestly, that means there is. It means there is. And I think the one part of that is definitely figuring out what that is, and then not being afraid to go for it or pursue it, and definitely not to let what other people think hold you back. Because if I had done that, there's a lot of ripple effect that never would have happened, that is so much bigger than me. That is bigger than, when I say it's bigger than me, I mean it's bigger than everything here on this earth. It's bigger. There's a bigger picture. There's a lot going on that we don't see. There's a spiritual warfare going on. And if I feel called, I trust that calling. And if there's something stirring in you, it's because He does have something more He's wanting to poke at you to do. So don't ignore it. Let's see here. I don't feel like I've lost myself. I feel like at 33, I'm finally finding myself. That's great. Before kids, I spent so much time working, I didn't have time to figure out who I am. That's wonderful, Tiffany. I think that's wonderful, and I'm so happy for you that you feel like you're finding yourself, and I think that's great. God gave us children to enhance ourselves, not hinder us, and that in taking care of ourselves, it takes care of our kids too. Absolutely, Donna, for sure. I love that. Your mom's a wise lady. Okay, so let's see here. Let me get going, okay? So your passion, strategy number 1, your passion. This is such a wonderful topic, and it's such a wonderful chapter, and I think that it's going to have you on fire. I really do, because it's so good. I know when I was reading it, I was just I'm wanting to talk with my hands just while I'm reading. It's so good. I hope you got the book so that you can read along. So your passion, strategy number 1. If I were your enemy, I'd seek to dim your passion, dull your interest in spiritual things, dampen your belief in God's ability and His personal concern for you, and convince you that the hope you've lost is never coming back. and was probably just a lie to begin with. Fervent prayer is fueled by passion, by faith, by fire. When everything else inside you is pulling you in 20 million different directions, ding, 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 off to the next busy thing in your busy day, if not off to bed and off the clock. Who can relate already? Passion is what plasters your knees to the floor and digs in for dear life. It's your oomph, your chutzpah, your cutting edge. Passion is what pushes the athlete to run one more lap, to crunch through one more set of reps. It's what silences those screaming thigh and stomach muscles, making them do what their owner demands of them, no matter how loudly they complain. Passion is what keeps a piano player anchored to the practice bench when no one else is around to notice the effort or give a pat on the back for approval. Passion is what inspires the eager young employee to outperform expectations instead of just punching the clock to earn a paycheck like everybody else. Passion is what burns up the road between a child in danger and a parent in pursuit. It glows red hot, and it goes on driving, and it grows even larger the larger the obstacles become. And that is so true, man. When you find something you're passionate about, man, I just like, how many more times can I say man? But when you find something that you're passionate about, the harder the enemy fights you on it, the more you want it, man. 3 times. Maybe I'm really fired up. I don't know. I used to say that all the time when I was little. My mom would be cracking up right now. But it does, you know, the harder he fights you, the more you just want it. Passion is the fuel and the engine of your purpose. It's your want to. It's what keeps you going when mundane tasks bore you or difficult ones dissuade you. Passion is what keeps you moving in the direction your best intentions want you to go. That's why if I were your enemy, I'd make stealing your passion one of my primary goals, because I know if I could dim your passion, I could significantly lower your resistance to temptation and discouragement. That means, you know, can I repeat that just in case you didn't catch it? You could significantly lower your resistance to temptation and discouragement, meaning you're tempted easier and you get discouraged easier. Have you been there? Because I have. I could make you walk with a spiritual limp and lengthen how long it takes you to recover from injury. How many of you already came on and said that your prayer life's pretty lukewarm, if not existent at all? That spiritual limp. You know, he's used life to get you down. If I could chip away at your zeal, at your hope, at your belief in God, at what he can do, I could chisel down your faith to a whimper. Make you want to quit and never try again. I'd cup an ear to your direction. Hear nothing in your voice that sounds like anything but token prayer and snicker at my success. Chalk another one up to my passion elimination plan, the one with your name on it. That's what I'd do if I were your enemy. I'd weaken your passion, your cutting edge, knowing full well that weak, impotent prayers, or better yet, prayerlessness, would follow right behind. So take a long, hard, deep look at yourself and answer this question. Answer this question. I want you to actually answer this question. Write it down. Put it in the comments. I don't care, but answer it. But I want you to think about it. You don't necessarily have to answer it immediately. Have you lost your passion? Has your get up and go simply got up and gone? Answer that question to yourself. Maybe you've prayed and prayed for the same thing over and over. Maybe you've wanted God's will so bad and wanted life to look different for so long. Maybe you're feeling utterly discouraged or disappointed right now and not sure why you keep being surprised every time the same old things keep happening again and again. Maybe other demands and distractions have leaked into your heart over time, crowding out space where older, nobler priorities once ruled. I get all of that. I've felt a lot of that. But what makes you think it's somehow all God's fault? Or your fault? Or everybody else's fault? But never the enemy's fault. Why aren't we equally as quick to recognize the telltale marks of his darkened ideas and initiative? Awareness, y'all. When you can't seem to respond to spiritual stimuli with the same optimism and obedience as you once did, why do you think it could only be attributable to your bad character? To a drop in your hormone levels? To the normal deterioration that comes from age and accumulated adversity? Maybe another less noticeable but equally probable reason is that you've been a victim of satanic sabotage. It's a strategy against you on purpose. An assault launched with pinpoint planning and detail. I mean, think about it. Doesn't it fit the profile? Satan is a full-time accuser. He does it day and night. The Bible says in Revelation chapter 12, verse 10, instead of convicting you for the purpose of restoration, which is what God's Spirit does, convicts you with the purpose of restoration. The enemy condemns you for the purpose of destroying and humiliating. That is such a key nugget right there. I hope you will write that down. The Holy Spirit, God, He convicts you. How many of you have ever felt convicted about something? Now, see, conviction doesn't make you feel guilty, humiliated, or bad about who you are. Conviction is God's way of guiding you to making better decisions, right? It's just like, He's your father. It's His way of saying this was wrong. This is how you can do this better. This is how you do this better. It's a conviction. But the enemy condemns you. He condemns you with the purpose of destroying you and humiliating you. Now think of a time in your life where you definitely did not feel convicted, but you felt something destroyed you. And it was something, guilt is a major one. Here's the difference between the enemy and your Lord and Savior, is that when you do something wrong and you repent and you make it right, you're free from it, period. You're free from it because you're forgiven. But what the enemy does is he lays this thick, heavy cloud of guilt. And it's like a dark, nasty seed inside of you, and it weighs on you, and it just grows and grows and grows. And what it does is that one feeling of guilt begins to seep into every aspect of your life. You begin to act out, say things you wouldn't normally say, behave in a way that is a reflection of what He's made you think you are because of this guilt. So recognize that. Learn to have that discernment and know when it's Him trying to do His dirty work and when it's the Lord just trying to help you be better. It's Revelation chapter 12, verse 10, Allison. This pattern, by the way, is classic proof of the enemy's influence. Watch for it and note his fingerprints. Condemnation always leads to guilt-laden discouragement, while conviction, though often painful in pointing out our wrongdoing, still somehow encourages and lifts us, giving us hope to rebuild. The first makes you focus on yourself. The other points you to the grace and empowering mercy of Christ. To hear the devil tell it, those weaknesses of yours are reasons. Hold on, let me restart that. The way the devil tells it, these weaknesses of yours are reason for nothing but wretched despair. Yet God says those same weaknesses are reason for your purest worship and gratitude. Your need for God's grace is supposed to be a passion enhancer. That's the opposite of what takes place, however, as soon as you start believing the enemy's accusations. He'll make you think God doesn't hear your prayers or respond to them. Why? Because of you. That's what he wants you to believe, that you're the reason. Something's wrong with you. How typical. Because Satan, in addition to being an accuser, is also a confirmed liar. He's a liar. No worse. He's the father of lies. John chapter 8, verse 44. John chapter 8, verse 44. He's the father of lies. The granddaddy of all untruth. Deception is the overarching umbrella that encompasses all his plans and programs. He deceives you. He warps your perspective on the current events in your life until reality appears much worse and more desperate than it truly is. I'm not saying your situation is not legitimately bad. Perhaps it is painful beyond description, but through his lying eyes, any passion for perseverance seems like a silly, sentimental waste of time. And yet he has the gall to insinuate that God is the one who lies to you, that any delay in the Lord's visible response to your prayer is open and shut evidence that he doesn't really hear you. He says, like he says, or if he does, he apparently doesn't mind seeing you writhe in discomfort while you wait on his own sweet timing. He stopped it. I'm still going. Are y'all good? Do y'all hear me? Somebody tell me you can hear me. Somebody said the video stopped, but with me it's still going. Somebody? Really? Are you kidding me? Okay, good. Okay, good. I was about to say, not today, Satan. Not today. Y'all, how many times have you, felt that, though? Felt that? I know I did. There's many times in my life, here, let me give you a real good example here. There are so many times in my life where I did wonder if he was even real, or if it was just something my mom told me, or that the church convinced me to believe. And so many bad things had happened in my life. There were moments in my life when I was younger where I thought, well, if he is and he loves me so much, then why is all this bad stuff always happening to us? And the difference between the person I was then, with no real relationship with the Lord and not really even knowing who he was, and then here we are, fast forward to me being in my 30s. I was 30 years old, and the worst thing that's ever happened in my life with not only Ainsley getting sick with cancer, but watching her slowly deteriorate over time and then ultimately losing her was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. But I did not, even for 1 second, feel like God was doing that to us, or that he didn't love us enough to swoop in and fix it. I never felt that way. And the difference was my relationship and how much I knew God at that point. I knew him. I knew better. I know him. I also understood, because he put it on my heart. He put it on my heart that he loves me. He loved her. And that the enemy puts these things on us. He puts these things on us. And honestly, y'all, I'll say this, and some people might not feel this way, but I just know it in my spirit. God swooped in and saved. He did fix her. He saved her from what the enemy was not letting up. The enemy was not going to let up with the cancer. He wasn't going to give her a break. And I think that God he couldn't watch her suffer anymore. And he took her home, where she's now, she's vibrant and she's healthy, and she's never got to feel that way again. And yes, we're here left in a world without her presence, and it hurts. And it's not because he doesn't love us. He loves us very much, and he hurts for us, and he hurts for our loss, and he hurts for our grief. He feels it, and he feels it stronger than we do. And one day we'll understand. And right now, there might be things happening in your life, and you just don't know. You don't know what's happening. You don't know why. Here's the thing. You don't have to know. And you're not supposed to. You're free to feel the pain, though. You're free to work through it. And you're free to grieve. And you're free to ask the questions. Why? Jesus Christ himself asked why. He had that flesh moment. He understands. He understands you. That's the point. Is he died for your freedom to ask the question. You can ask why. You're not going to know. You're never going to understand. And you never will until you get to heaven. But you've got the right to ask the question because of Jesus' sacrifice for you. He hung on that cross and he asked God, why? Because it's our flesh, and our flesh hurts. And our spirit is where Jesus resides. Our flesh is what the enemy tries to use against us to dim that spirit out, right? So yes, bad things happen, and no, we don't understand why. But no, it's not God doing it to you, and it's not him ignoring you. What he does, which is so much more powerful, is that when the enemy puts bad things in your life, he gives you a way to make something good out of it. Even the most worst thing you can think of. Losing that child to cancer is at this moment in my life, I can't think of anything much worse. But he's helped me see with my spirit how I could do something good stemming from that experience. That's what he does. And he can do that for you too, but you have to let him. You have to let go of anger and hurt and fleshly feelings, which is what the enemy does. He, like she said, he puts that discouragement on you, and you've got to let that go and give God permission to come in, love you, and let you, and work through you, and work through what you've been through. And he will. And because there's such a bigger picture here, and that bigger picture is the impact that you make on others who are going to experience similar things that you have, similar hard times. We all have different things. So that's the bigger picture, is the impact you leave while you're here, because this is just a means to heaven. I mean, none of this is going to matter one day. And that hit me so hard when I was so broken and so, grief struck and it hit me. This is not forever. We can't even comprehend. But what we do here matters, and what we leave behind matters. And so that's the calling. That's the calling, and that's the passion. Okay. I lost my place in the book. I just had to give you that real quick. I don't know why. Maybe some of you are dealing with grief right now, and that might help you work through it. But such biting accusations against you and against God, such bitter lies about what's really taking place, those are just some of the ways he tries to eat away your passion. Not overtly and conspicuously. He's much too crafty for that, but cunningly, slowly, incrementally, over time. And sometimes he gets us. We don't recognize it's him at first working behind the scenes, and we think the reason we've stopped praying is because, we just don't feel like it anymore. And sure, maybe that's the way it really is. But possibly, this lack of feeling is a clue that the enemy's strategy has begun to take effect. He's worked you down enough until you can't seem to muster up the will to fight back, to keep believing for and praying about your marriage, still hopelessly tense and broken, your child still rebelling against all logic, your money still not enough to feel like enough, your health still as chronic or scary as ever, your addictions still defeating you way too often. You just can't seem to bring these up to God anymore because there doesn't seem to be any spiritual fire burning inside. Maybe even right now, even while reading a book that's inviting you back where you once walked, back to fervent believing prayer, you honestly just don't see the point in going there again. So here's what I'd say to you. Let's start here. Praying for this, to recover and maintain your passion, to regain and sustain your cutting edge. In order to do it, I want to take you back to a real life story that God placed in Scripture. It's 2 Kings chapter 6 verses 1 through 7. Okay? 2 Kings chapter 6 verses 1 through 7 is the story we're going to tell you. This story is for such a moment like this. I want to use it and the principles it teaches to encourage your heart, and then help you begin stirring up a strategy to get your passion back. Because if you're not at a low passion point right now, the time will likely come when you'll feel yourself being tugged there. And when that season comes, make a note to put this story on your must-read list. Okay? Put this story on your must-read list. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 1 through 7. As it happened, the prophet Elijah was standing near one of his proteges who was chopping down a tree at the banks of the Jordan River, laboring to gather the raw materials needed for building a larger meeting place. But at one point, in either an upswing or a downswing, the iron head of that man's axe wiggled loose from its wooden handle and sailed into the water, plopping to the bottom. And just like that, he had lost his cutting edge. The young prophet was horrified. Not only had he lost the one tool on hand, the most important tool in the toolbox for moving him toward the outcome he desired, but the axe he'd been using had been borrowed from a friend. The kerplunk of that dead weight in the water was a double whammy of disappointment and disgust. He couldn't go forward with his building project, and now he'd have to go to the person who loaned him the axe and tell them what happened. That he had broken it, lost it, and that there was no getting it back. Notice, though, these encouraging details from the story. Number 1, Despite the lost axe head, the presence of God was still near. In ancient Israel, Yahweh's prophets were representations of his presence and power with his people. So when the man in the story lost the axe head, the fact that the prophet Elijah was right there alongside him in verse 3 wasn't just a simple comfort. It mattered that Elijah had seen how hard this man had worked, all the trees he had chopped down, and how his cutting edge had been lost. It mattered that God's presence and the man's loss occurred within proximity to the other. Satan would like to convince you that your lack of passion is an indication that God was either never there at all or had gotten disgusted with you and left. He wants you to believe that God has not seen your struggle and is unaware or disinterested in the details of your life. But just because you're feeling at a loss for words and want to, just because your cutting edge in prayer seems misplaced for now, does not mean that God isn't close by. Number 2, the servant was doing something good when he lost his cutting edge. He was being productive, building a new dwelling for himself and for those others involved in the school. In fact, if he hadn't been working so hard, if he had just been sitting around doing nothing, there's little chance the axe would have ever become gradually loosened and ultimately dislodged. See, I love this parable because there's so many things in life that some of y'all aren't doing out of fear of failure. And what you risk when you don't do that out of fear is that you sit on the side and do nothing instead of giving yourself a chance to do something good because you're afraid you might lose your cutting edge. This tells me that being engaged is good, even godly. Productive things is not an automatic guard against losing your cutting edge. In fact, one of Satan's dirtiest little tactics is to sneak in and steal it while you're square in the middle of investing yourself in a worthwhile activity. Have you ever been trying to do something really, really good and something bad happens and you're like, I should have never even tried? Well, this is the point, is that you should try. You should try. That's when you're sensing a drag in your faith, in your spiritual fire. It can sometimes simply mean that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing and doing it well. And that's the only reason the enemy swoops in and tries to get you to quit. The axe was borrowed. The presence of passion, faith, and belief in our hearts is a gift. It's on loan to our souls. Like the man's axe, our passion and spiritual fervor come from someone else as a gift to us. If you've ever cried out passionately to God in faith, fully believing that he is able to do more than you ask or think or imagine, it's only because he first stirred up that passion within you. So instead of always feeling guilty, personally responsible, whenever your passion in prayer is weak or missing, realize instead that it is God's work both to give it and then to fan it into flame inside you. Which means you cannot manufacture it on your own. Your enemy, however, coy as he is, wants to burden you with blame for not having something that didn't originate with you in the first place. Don't fall for that. Number 4, only a work of God could retrieve the axe head. Where did it fall? The man of God asked. When he showed him the place, Elijah cut a stick and threw it into the water at that spot. Then the axe head floated to the surface. Just like that. Miraculously, by Elijah's hand, the slab of iron wrestled free from the murky riverbed and bobbed up to the surface as if it were nothing but a floating chunk of driftwood. That's crazy. There it is. His cutting edge was back. Divinely recovered. Elijah's servant had understandably been convinced there was no hope of ever seeing it again. And there wouldn't have been, except that he went to Elijah. God, through the prophet, stepped in and made it reappear. And God can work through you to do some pretty incredible things if you'll let him. If the axe head had just dropped onto the ground, anybody who saw where it went, including the man himself, could have picked it up and salvaged it. Instead, it was deep in the river. Only a miracle could get it back. Just like you might need a miracle to get yours back too, if it sunk to the bottom, like everyone's passion for prayer has done at one time or another. Listen to me. Nothing is too far gone that your God cannot resurrect it. even your cutting edge. So go to him and get it back. Don't try to regain it yourself. Don't set your hopes on other people or circumstances to fuse it back into the fiber of your being. Trust it into God's care. Only his miraculous work can make it bubble back up on the surface where it belongs. And he is more than willing to do it. So here we go. It's a call to prayer. Because it's, can I just point something out real quick? These are not just stories. Sometimes I actually even forget, even especially as a child when you're being told, the Bible stories. They're not just stories. They're real. They're real. They really happened. And sometimes it's like I know I do. I almost think of them as like a movie or like I play it in my head, but I almost forget that it's just as real as you and me here talking right now. It really happened. This is an axe head. It's buried at the bottom of a mucky river. And all he did was toss a stick in there and it floated to the top. Iron doesn't float. This really happened. Let that sink in for a second. What God can do through you for others. It doesn't matter how sunk someone is. If you let God work through you, you can bring them back to the surface. You can. And some people are so lost in themselves. Like they've pushed that light down and all they need is somebody to come along with Christ, with that love of Christ in them, to pull it back out of them, to bring it back to the surface. And that can be you. You can be that person. I think that's a huge calling for Christians in general, is to want to be that person, to be that light. Not to spend your time, just telling everybody how they should live and judging and all of that, but to be that light, that person that comes around and says, and throws that stick in their river, knowing that if you just toss it in there, that it will, that heavy iron will float to the top, that person is not lost. You're not that person who comes along discouraging them and twisting the knife. You're that person who comes along and helps them bring that light back, who believes in them and loves on them, right? Call to prayer. So here we go. Before we tackle and craft prayer strategies for the 9 other topics in this book, the seminal matter of getting and maintaining your cutting edge so that we even want to pray again is foundational. But when we talk about passion in prayer, I sure don't want to leave the impression that the only prayer God hears is the kind that's spoken at high volume with sweat and tears and shaking fists and extraordinary energy. Prayer can be silent and still seethe with passion. And on some days, at sometimes, prayer for any of us can start out as simply an obedient appointment, an act of discipline, showing up in that prayer closet because it's the appointed time that we said we'd be there. Because praying, reaching outward and upward to him, is the way his passion comes down. Even prayers that begin with the blunt edge of willpower, dragging your heart along, kicking and screaming, can soon begin to shine with the cutting edge of hope, faith, and passionate confidence in Christ. Once the wind of God's Spirit starts blowing, you're no longer praying rote, innocuous prayers. Instead, you're praying deliberate prayers. Prayers that are as personalized and devastating as the enemy's attacks against you. Strategic prayers, powerful prayers. Prayers that tell the enemy his cover has been blown. I love that. I love that. Man, I think you should take every opportunity you possibly can to let him know that you're on to him and that you know what he's doing, because that's the worst thing. That's the worst thing you could do in his eyes, because he's a snake, remember? He's a snake. He doesn't want to be seen. He wants to be sliding through in the tall grass where you can't see him, coming, and he wants to be able to get away quickly so no one ever even knew he was there. And so one of the worst things you can do to him is to let him know that you know what he's doing and that you're not having it. Because who are you? Who are you? Because you're a child of God. And you're powerful. And you have his love. And man, the enemy can't do a single thing to you when you know that. And when you not just know that, but you live it. And you speak it. And you mean it. And you own it. Prayer is built on the promise of God that entreat him to give you back what he was responsible for giving you in the first place. Infuse your first prayer strategy with passages and promises like these. I'm going to read a few of these. Now, they give you a few scriptures, right, for different passages that you can start with to just kind of pray these. So I'm going to give you a couple of them. There's a bunch, so I'm just going to give you a couple. But here's Jeremiah chapter 24, verse 7. I will give them a heart to know me, for I am the Lord, and they will be my people, and I will be their God, for they will return to me with their whole heart. That's Jeremiah chapter 24, verse 7. Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 12 and 13. Call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. Notice he says, seek me. Sometimes even when we're praying, we're not seeking him. We're just praying to pray. We're just tossing some random words up there. Or we all of a sudden something didn't go right. Now we want to pray. And so we throw some things out there. And he knows your heart. He knows what you're doing. Those aren't effective prayers. Seek me. When you're seeking something, you're looking for it. You want it, right? Seek him and you will find him. But it says you have to seek him and you will find him. He's there, but you can't see him. But if you're not truly seeking him, you won't find him. He's there, but you won't find him. You'll find me when you search for me with all your heart. Not half-heartedly, not, I hope you're there. What does that say when you say, I hope you're there? I hope you are, but there's a chance you're not? No. Seek him with all your heart. All your heart. Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 12 and 13 was that one. Okay. Now here's one that's one of my favorites, and everyone, I think a lot of people know it, but Mark chapter 12, verse 30. Mark chapter 12, verse 30. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your soul, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. That's a passionate love. Love your God, your Lord, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. Not pieces of it, not little bits here and there when you need him, not only when life gets hard, all the time. Okay. Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 26. Okay. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Before I gave, let me say something. I would have told you I was a Christian since the time I was about 10 years old. The truth is, though, I was like many Christians, what we call sleepy Christians, and I was probably more of a fan of God than a follower. I wasn't living with him first. I didn't seek him on a daily basis. I didn't pray to him every day. I didn't thank him every day. When I had a problem, I didn't look to him for the answer. I was just trying to force my way into a happy life and success. And I can do this. It was all about me. And, if you're a fan of God and you're a fan of Jesus, more than likely, you haven't had to sacrifice a single thing to love him. Because, see, fans are in the stands cheering him on until something doesn't go their way. And then they leave the stadium early before the game's over, right? But a follower, your love's unconditional. And more than likely, you have sacrificed something to love him. I've had to sacrifice followers. I've sacrificed friendships. I've sacrificed, being judged, and it was really scary to be open about faith in front of many people. And I think a lot of people hold back from that, especially on like if you have a social media platform. It's really easy to just like not leave that part out, because you will be judged, and sometimes you're judged more harsh by fellow Christians than you are by other people, and that's scary. So some people just keep it to themselves. So I sacrificed that, and I also sacrificed what I want, all the things I want, me. Those things had to be sacrificed. I had to start living for what He wants and what He wants of me, because I'll be honest with you, my flesh doesn't always want to love people and doesn't always want to forgive, and that's a sacrifice we make to be followers of God. We choose. It's a choice. My flesh, it could have been so easy when Ansley passed away for my flesh to get me to turn my back on God and to revel and roll in anger and grief and a pity, feeling sorry for myself. And a lot of the times that's what turns into addictions, eating disorders, doing things that make you extremely unhealthy, that impact your health. It turns into being an angry, hateful person who doesn't treat people well. And all of those things hurt you, right? But the enemy makes sure that they feel good while you're doing it. That flesh. He likes to manipulate your flesh, your feelings, your thoughts. My flesh would have loved, and does sometimes love, to binge on just crap. Like stuff that I don't even want. Just crap. I don't even know why. I can't even tell you why. That's some people it's alcohol. Some people it's drugs. For me, it was always food. But when we lost her, instead, I chose not to go that route, to recognize what the enemy was doing, which we talked about, and to say, what do you want me to do, God? What do you want me to do with all this grief I'm feeling? What do you want me to, what can you do with me? What can you do with this? And He just said, talk about it. That's all He told me to do. Just talk about it. And be honest about it. Be honest about how you're feeling. So, as scary as it was, I started making the videos on my personal Facebook page. The first video I ever made over a year ago, I actually posted recently on my page, and you could tell I'm really nervous. I wasn't as used to speaking. I was really nervous. I didn't want to do it. My flesh did not want to do it. I was nervous and scared, and I wanted to go drown myself in a bag of Doritos and a 2-liter Pepsi. But I did it. And I'll be darned if He didn't send out such a ripple effect, not in my life, but in other people's lives who were experiencing the same thing. And I know some of you, because I've glanced at the comments, but I just glanced so I don't lose my train of thought, but I know some of you are experiencing very similar things, grief, loss, and your flesh. It's easy to revel and roll in that pit of that pity party and wallowing in grief and sorrow. And it kind of feels good, doesn't it? You feel so bad, and yet somehow when you wallow, it kind of feels good. Because you've kind of given yourself permission to do this thing that you know is not good for you, or do this thing that you know that's bad for you, to have this thought that you know is not true. But it makes your flesh feel better for a second. But it's not good for you. It's destroying you, as a matter of fact. Give it to God. Do what He tells you, and He will heal you. And if you're hurting, go out and help somebody. One of the first things He told me to heal myself, so much peace it gives me when someone says, I am feeling the same way, and because you shared your story, I feel so much better about it, and I feel like I have found my way back to God again. That for me is everything, and it will be everything for you too, and it gives you the peace you're seeking. So when you're hurting over something, whatever it is, find a way to take that pain and turn it into purpose, repurpose it, turn it into purpose. Odds are there's a lot of passion that bubbles around that thing because it's so heavy on you. It means a lot to you. So take that passion, take that anger you feel, take all of that grief and confusion and turn it into passion, and go out and help people in some way, in whatever way you are individually capable, and it will give you peace. Okay? So she said, don't read that last one too quickly. And that last one was this: I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove your heart of stone and I will give you a heart of flesh. Do you see the promise? I will give you, I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart that's alive and tender again. One that's beating and responsive again, engaged again, able to believe again. That's his promise to you, is that he will give that to you. A prayer that's seeking passion should not be about manufacturing a better feeling or jostling up a better mood. It's simply about holding out your open hands in thanksgiving first, in gratitude for God's faithfulness and his goodness and his assured accomplished victory over the enemy. Then asking for what he already wants to give you. Then waiting and expecting to receive the promise of newness and freshness from his Spirit as you go along more each day, praying until, as the prophet Hosea said, he will come to us like the rain, like the spring rain watering the earth. And what a day that will be, where finally you're free from the flesh crap that is constantly laid on you in this world. I want to let y'all know something. You are capable to live in the promised land when your circumstances seem like that of the wilderness. You know the story, the wilderness story. They were in the wilderness for 40 years, and what should have been, I think, what was it? I don't even remember. It should have been like a 11-day journey or something like that. It took them 40 years. Why do you think that? Why do you think it took them 40 years instead of what should have been maybe a I don't know, I think it was 11 days. Was it 11? I don't remember now. I knew that. It just slipped my brain. But it was supposed to be a very, very short journey. It took them 40 years. Do you think they were probably getting in their own way over and over and over again? Many times in life, you're going to feel like you're in the wilderness, right? Where you just don't understand what's going on. You don't see the point, and you don't even know. Many times you don't even know. You look back, you can't even see where you started, and you don't know where you're going. And I want to say to you that if you're living in Christ and you are living with a relationship with him, serving his purpose, and sometimes giving up that need to know and just having unfiltered faith, just like, I don't need to know anything other than I know that you love me, that you want the good for me, and that whatever it is that I'm going through right now, if I would stop thinking about me and take a look around at what's going on around me, I would probably be able to see some section of what's going on in this struggle where I could actually add some value or help someone or be a light to someone else instead of being so focused on me. Take a look around and what's going on in your wilderness. What's happening around you? Is there an area in your wilderness where you could be adding some value, where you could be a light, maybe there's someone, in your circle that you didn't even realize was maybe there because God wanted you to be someone who helped them. But you're so focused on your wilderness and what's going on and me, that you didn't see it. Ask yourself, take a look around. Also, have that realization that every single hard time in your life has built character in you of some sort that makes you who you are and makes you capable of certain things other people might not be capable of, right? I learned that many of the hard times in my life were building character in me that I was going to have years down the road when God laid his promise on me, which blows my mind. And I want you to think about that because every single hard time, you at the moment you don't see the purpose, but you're not supposed to, because the purpose might not come for years. It might not be for years down the road. So many of the things that I experienced in the first, half of my life, I realize now were building character in me because I let it, that I would need to have. True story. If I had had a viral video 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I would have probably canceled my Facebook account, quit, went and hid under a rock, and freaked out. I would have quit coaching. I would have freaked out. That happened when it was supposed to happen. I had to have a certain kind of character built in me before I would have been capable of receiving the promise he always knew he was going to give me. I didn't know, but he knew. And I want you to recognize that right now. There's things you don't know that he's going to do for you in your life that you don't know right now. But you got to have faith that he does have something in store for you. And you've got to get out of your own way so that you can receive it. Okay? All right. So I think that was a good place to stop off. Strategy number 2 is focus. If any of you saw my recent house cleaning video, I could use some of that. So focus. Strategy number 2 is focus. Fighting the real enemy. It's going to be good. I can't wait. All right. Love y'all. Love you girls. Love you ladies.